Little Red Riding Hood, retold by Bonnie Dobkin. Once upon a time, a little girl lived with her mother and brother in a small cottage by the edge of a forest. Her favorite piece of clothing was a long red cape with a soft silky hood. She wore it so often that soon everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood was bored and looking for something to do. "You could come sweep the floors," said her mother, who was busy painting a fence. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I don't think that's what I want to do." "You can help clean the yard," said her brother, who was busy chopping wood. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I don't think that's what I want to do." "Then you could go visit your grandmother," said her mother. "You're old enough to go by yourself, and you haven't seen her for weeks." "That's exactly what I want to do," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Grandmother lives on the other side of the woods. It will be an adventure." So Little Riding Hood's mother packed a basket full of treats for the little girl to take to her grandmother. "Just remember," said her mother, "the woods can be very dangerous. When you leave, I want you to go straight to your grandmother's house and don't be late." "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Something else before you go. Only talk to people you know. Never talk to strangers." "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "And oh, one more thing. Never go off the path, or you could get lost someday if you stray away from the path." "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Goodbye, dear, and give your grandmother a big hug." "Yes, mother." There was so much for Little Red Riding Hood to see in the woods. There was a sleeping bird, a giant mushroom, an amazing spider web. Then Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mama said. Go straight to her grandmother's and don't be late. "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "maybe I could stop and look around for a little while." Uh-oh. Just then a dark shape stepped out from behind one of the trees. It was a wolf, and he was smiling. "Why, hello, little girl," said the wolf. "It is such a lovely day." Little Red Riding Hood remembered that her mama said, "Never talk to strangers, only talk to people you know." But Red thought, "He looks like a friendly wolf. Mother doesn't want me to be rude." "Hello, Mr. Wolf," said Red Riding Hood. "Yes, it's such a lovely day." "And you seem to be such a delicious looking such a delightful child. What might your name be?" "Everyone calls me Little Red Riding Hood," said the little girl. "A splendid name," said the wolf. "And where might you be headed, Little Red, if I can call you that?" "You may," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I'm bringing grandmother this basket of treats. She lives on the other side of the forest." "How kind of you," the wolf said. "In fact, wouldn't your grandmother like a lovely bouquet of flowers? There are some over there." Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother said. You must stay on the path, or you might get lost. But Little Red Riding Hood saw the flowers, and she said it might be such a good thing to pick some flowers for grandmother. "Oh, I'm going to get some," The wolf said, "Goodbye, Little Red. I'm sure we'll meet again someday. Maybe for lunch." The moment the Little Red Riding Hood disappeared to pick flowers, the wolf dashed down the pathway toward Grandmother's cottage. He knocked on the door. "Grandmother," he said in his best little girl voice, "it's me, Little Red Riding Hood." "Little Red? Really? How wonderful!" Grandmother opened up the door. "Wait," she said. "You're not Red Riding Hood." "Sadly, no," said the wolf. And he gobbled Grandmother up in one big gulp. He patted his stomach and said, "Now I'll wait for Red Riding Hood for dessert." Oh no. Sometime later, Little Red Riding Hood came out of the woods. She was dirty, rumpled. There was sticklebriars in her hair, and it was much harder for her to find the path again. She was lost. When she got to Grandmother, she was surprised to see that the door was wide open. She came inside. "Grandma! Grandma, are you home?" Yes, dear," came a scratchy voice from the bedroom. "But I'm in bed. I have a nasty cold." I don't think that's Grandma, friends. Red Riding Hood followed the voice into the bedroom. The curtains were closed and it was very dark. Grandma was wearing a floppy night hat and her blankets were pulled up past her nose. Red Riding Hood moved toward the bed. Grandmother's eyes looked very odd. "Why, Grandmother," she said, "what big eyes you have." "Oh, the better to see you with, my dear. Come closer so Grandma can give you a hug." Red Riding Hood took another step closer. Now she saw two odd triangles sticking up under the nightcap. "And Grandma, what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my dear. Now come a little closer to Grandma." Just then, the blankets slipped off from Grandma's face and out popped two sharp rows of very sharp teeth. "But Grandmother," said Red Riding Hood, "what big teeth you have." "The better to eat you with," roared the wolf, leaping out of Grandma's bed. "Ah!" Red Riding Hood screamed. She ran out the bathroom, through the main room, and into the kitchen, slamming the doors behind her. She climbed in the cabinet and closed the door. "Oh, why didn't I listen to my mama? I shouldn't have stopped in that woods. I shouldn't have talked to that wolf, and I should have stayed on that path. Oh, I would not have been late to Grandma's, and none of this would have happened." In the kitchen, she could hear the wolf calling her. "Where are you, Little Red?" he said. "There's no need to hide." "I'm going to find you and eat you no matter what!" "Ha ha ha ha!" Just then, something crashed. A voice yelled. Dishes smashed. The sounds got louder and wilder and wilder. And then everything was quiet. Let's see what happened. Little Red Riding Hood peeked out from the cabinet. There stood her big brother with his axe in one hand. He was helping Grandmother step out of the wolf. "Thank you, dear," said Grandmother. "It was very nasty and dark inside of that wolf's stomach." The brother looked at Little Red Riding Hood. "I knew you wouldn't listen. I knew you wouldn't listen." Little Red Riding Hood got out of that cabinet and gave her big brother a big, big hug. "You were right," she said, "but I will listen from now on, big brother." Then Red Riding Hood, her brother, and their grandmother all sat down together to eat the treats from the basket. The end.